This is perfect. We're finished. Let Danielle know we're finished.
Awesome. All right.
Oh, look at me. Hi, Svetlana.
Maybe pause recording for now.
Perhaps not. I will move on, but what I'll do is I'll try to put my the slide you see before you right now up at the end of this presentation so you can get a chance to copy the information down if you haven't done so already. So moving right along. First of all, I'm going to talk about, give you an overview of the Clean Energy for Rural and Remote Communities program, affectionately known as the CERRC program. We call it CERRC de Forêt, which is the French word for forest, as opposed to CERRC de Soleil, which you're all familiar with. So we're CERRC de Forêt, the CERRC program. There are several streams, I'll talk about them in a minute, but the BioHeat stream is the one that Dan and Andre and I represent. We'll be talking about that. We have a project example for you that the Gitxsan Development Corporation has done to give you an example of what happens with some of our funding when it's applied to economic development in the forestry area. Then we'll have some discussion and some questioning time at the end. So what is the Clean Energy for Rural and Remote Communities program would be the operative question. The Government of Canada's Clean Energy for Rural and Remote Communities program provides funding to support a more sustainable and clean energy future by supporting a suite of diverse renewable energy projects across Canada to reduce the reliance of rural and remote communities, and I'll define those, on diesel fuel for heat and power. We also reduce it for propane. There's the occasional community that's on propane for heat, and we can apply our incentive to that as well. When we define a remote community, we define it as not connected to the main North American electricity grid, nor to the North American piped natural gas network. And it's a permanent or long-term, and these days permanent's like getting your hair done, you know, permanent, yeah. We say 5 years or more, we consider that permanent settlement. If that's the case and it has 10 buildings or more, then it could qualify as a remote community. For it to qualify as a rural community, and we have our own very specific definition of that, it can be connected to the main North American electricity grid, which differentiates it from a remote community, but it cannot be connected to the North American natural gas pipe network. It must have a population of not more than 5,000 people, and interestingly, not have a population density greater than 400 people per square kilometer. It needs to be, again, a permanent or long-term, meaning 5 years or more, settlement with 10 or more dwellings in it. What we're looking for, a transition to renewable energy, can do the following things. This is what our program aims to do. Contribute to an energy mix that's better for the earth, more sustainable and more reliable and affordable. We want to harness local resources to support community energy autonomy. We want to lead the whole thing to lead to an improved health and better environmental outcomes for communities, and create local economic opportunities. We want to build local capacity, that is community capacity and knowledge. And when we say capacity, you're going to hear that term used again. Capacity basically means the ability to interact effectively in the business world, to have the resources on hand the personnel resources to be able to do that. So next we have a map that's kind of an interesting thing. It may be hard to see because it's quite small. All those things that look like landmines are not. They're actually communities that rely on diesel for their heat. The ones that are red, the ones that are green are for hydro, the ones that are sort of a taupe green are a regional grid. Like you'll notice in the Yukon, there's a little square around that. There's a separate grid in the Yukon that's not connected, as we say, connected to the main North American grid. And then there's some other ones as well. You see most of those in British Columbia, one of them in Quebec. Next, we'll talk about the streams. I mentioned there were several streams in the CERRC program. These are ordered in the order of the amount of funding that they have. The deployment stream having the most funding, and the energy efficiency stream having funding but not incentive funding. So we'll go through them. Deployment is about getting electricity onto the grid, renewable electricity. So it could be solar, it could be wind, it could be anything that produces electricity. A demonstration is where it has to be innovative. It's like the name suggests, it's a demonstration of something new. And will it work in a northern and remote community? Is it possible to do it? Now, the one that happens to be in red by some coincidence is the BioHeat program. Not that I'm biased toward that by any stretch of the imagination, but the BioHeat stream is about deploying proven biomass combustion and biomass gasification technologies. The distinction being biomass combustion is just heat, providing heat. Biomass gasification allows the opportunity to drive a turbine and to produce electricity at the same time in what we call cogeneration or cogen facilities. You'll sometimes see it referred to as CHP. Capacity building stream is a stream designed not to install things like the other three streams that I just mentioned are, but to do feasibility studies, to build the capacity within communities to interact with government and to take advantage of some of the incentives and things that governments offer. The energy efficiency subgroup is internal here at NRCan. They provide information on how to be more energy efficient. And it makes no sense to go renewable if you're not going to be energy efficient. You can't be trying to produce all kinds of power with renewable energy. It's best used in a more energy efficient realm, and that's why we've included that. It's been included in the CERRC program. Next, we have a little more discussion about bioenergy and strictly bioenergy, the bioheat side of things. We're trying to transition folks from diesel fuel and in some cases propane to bioenergy. So we've got sort of a pros and cons here. It divides up into sort of 4 areas, basically, with GHG emissions, spills and local pollution, etc. The side of it that is problematic in terms of using fossil fuels. We talk a little bit about what happens when you make the change to renewable energy and what advantages there are. So I'll kind of go through it with a little bit more focus. Why do we bother talking about forest biomass? So a bit of background. 140 indigenous remote forest-based indigenous communities are off-grid and facing long heating seasons because they're up north. They've got to have a reliable energy source for heating. It's a non-negotiable. Bioenergy projects can lead to a range of environmental and socioeconomic benefits. It advances reconciliation, it provides economic growth, and it fights climate change. So it matches the mandate of Natural Resources Canada, and it matches the desires of Indigenous communities. These include reduced GHG emissions, lower energy costs, local job creation and business development opportunities, reduced community dependence on non-local energy companies like oil companies, community capacity building, improved forest management practices, and reduced wildfire risk. So you can see there's a whack of potential advantages that we're aiming at with our program. Biomass combustion makes sense, not in every community, but it makes sense in communities, especially where there is, and I have a little list of things that are sort of prerequisites for a community to be a good candidate for biomass combustion. Community dependence on diesel or other fossil fuels for heat. That being the case, we can help. Community desire for a renewable, sustainable, locally sourced heating fuel. And of all the communities, I have 12 projects myself. We have a bunch of projects on the go. I haven't met a community yet that isn't interested in reducing their diesel consumption and getting on renewable energy. Thirdly, sustainable access to fiber. got to have sustainable access, sustainable being the key word, to forest resources, to wood. Limited or no connection to the electrical grid is a requirement. Experience with forestry industry operations, and an opportunity to share the benefits and lessons learned with nearby communities, hopefully. We have a couple of great examples where our projects have gone in, and then all of a sudden a tourism industry has developed because people in other communities are going, well, what are you doing? And how are you saving this money? And you're using local resources, and show us. So it's kind of like that. Next. Some projects, for example, we've got two projects. The picture's on the right. One of them's kind of humorous. The one at the bottom, the Upper Skeena Recreation Center, our pet name for it is the Skeena Arena Project, which is a little silly, but that's the kind of thing you do when you're in government. You got to entertain yourself somehow. So anyway, we've got biomass combustion heating systems, which are the straight ahead ones I talked about, just producing heat from forest-based resources. Biomass-fired combined heat and power, or CHP systems, which produce heat, but they also produce electricity. And we also can do the installation of wood pellet stoves and wood pellet furnaces. We currently have, we also have the ability to do district heating systems, which are where you produce heat in one central location and distribute it to several different buildings in a given community. CERRC-BioHeat, our program, is currently supporting 19 projects with a total investment of almost $30 million. So that's a fairly substantial chunk of change. We're building on experience and lessons learned from the past. The Indigenous Forestry Initiative is a sister program of the BioHeat and the CERRC program, and they've been working for several years doing all kinds of things in terms of economic development out in the community. They've learned a few lessons. I listed them here for you, and I'll add to the ones that you can read. And by saying that early assessment, any project that's going to work with forest, early assessment of fiber supply, the sustainability of fiber supply, and the development of biomass supply chains is critical. You can have all the desire you want, and if you don't have access and sustainable, reliable access to fiber supply, it's not going to work out as well, or for you at all. The other caveat I would throw at this is that we've learned that some biomass combustion and gasification technologies, and particularly gasification technologies, that's for combined heat and power, they're often European designs, and they're a bit finicky. They're highly dependent on a very careful supply of high quality, low moisture biomass feedstock, and that is not available in all areas of Canada. You have to have very good chipping equipment and very good controls on how you produce your feedstock in order to feed these systems and make them work. So you can see the stuff that's written there. It needs to be community driven. It can't be somebody's idea that they're trying to impose it on a community that doesn't want it. It needs to be a community developed initiative with a project champion in the community who can push it forward as it hits the inevitable bumps, speed bumps along the way. Developing long-term relationships and building community capacity always helps and I would say is crucial. You've got to have good project management and business planning. That's absolutely important, as I think everybody knows. And something we found out kind of the hard way in a community that we supported early in 1990s, Natural Resources Canada supported a community to put in the largest biomass combustion system in a rural community in Canada. And it started to fail in the last 3 years. And what they found was they weren't doing proper maintenance because they didn't know they needed to do a particular thing with some of the pipes and the quality of the water they were circulating. So we learned that you've got to have staff training, really replete staff training right at the get-go to make sure that the maintenance is looked after properly and that its operators know what the crucial things are in terms of operating the systems that we help folks to install. So here's a quote from the Bingui Niyashi Anishinaabe, I can't pronounce that very well, Chief Joe Ladouceur. And it's a beautiful thing really when the community, we've got to maintain that the communities have to be behind these things. And absent that, it is not going to go well. But listen to this. As Chief of Bingui Niyashi and Eonomic, a community that is developing from the ground up. This is in Ontario. I believe that environmental and energy sustainability are critical pillars of our community's development. Our biomass project has allowed us to fully utilize our sawmill wood waste to heat our facility and to prepare our homes for the future conversion to a district biomass heating system. This will ensure that our First Nation will be a leader in the clean biomass technologies going forward. We greatly thank Natural Resources Canada for its support and this incredibly important project and opportunity for our First Nation Miigwech, which means thank you. And you know, very keen, very nice for us, of course, to see that the community represented by the chief is very keen on this. And more to the point, you'll be hearing from Kelsey Harmse, who's going to tell you from the community standpoint more information about economic development. So I'll introduce Kelsey. Kelsey is the Director of Strategic Initiatives for Gitxsan Development Corporation, or GDC. GDC is the Economic Development Corporation for the Gitxsan Hereditary Chiefs. At GDC, Kelsey evaluates new business opportunities and strategizes business development and project funding. Kelsey has an undergraduate degree in biology and a master's degree in business administration and lives in Ladner, BC, lucky her, I'm green with envy, with her husband and 2 daughters. Kelsey, over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm gonna share my screen. Good morning, everyone. Just give me a second to get that going. Can everyone see that okay?
That's
Jeff,
good.
can you see? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk to you about what we've done in the Gitxsan territory. So just to start us out today, the Gitxsan territory is in British Columbia. So it's 33,000 square kilometers in northern BC. So it's along Highway 16. So if you're familiar with BC geography, I like to say it's the peak of Highway 16 is Hazelton, and that's right there where the star is there. Gitxsan Development Corporation is the business arm of the Hereditary Chiefs. So there are 65 Hereditary Chiefs. They each have a house group or a will. And there is roughly 13,000 Gitxsan people living on territory on reserve or out off of reserve and outside of community. So GDC was formed in 2011 as a result of the Delgamuukw Supreme Court of Canada case, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with that. Delgamuukw is a Gitxsan chief, actually, and even after the Supreme Court hearing, the Gitxsan people remained largely shut out of economic sectors, and we're looking for a way to get more involved in economic development in the region and make sure that they were their rights and titles were respected in business transactions that were happening. And so they created Gitxsan Development Corporation. So so I like to say, what are we supposed to be doing? So we create economic opportunities for the Gitxsan people, respecting their values and their laws and what they would like. A large part of that is that capacity training and training of people for new employment opportunities. So a lot of my role is to ensure that when we're building a business, that the training is and what the people need to know to work in that business are done simultaneously. So we have a number of businesses. Gitxsan Safety Services does pilot car, traffic control, medic, first aid, and security. BC Safety Link is a lone worker response system. So if you're working alone, you have a requirement to check in with your employer and be in constant communication. So we operate a call center in Hazelton that does lone worker check-ins and also traditional call center work. And then Gitxsan Environmental Services is a consulting company that does environmental monitoring, environmental stewardship, largely in terrestrial aquatics range, but their main goal is to build their members into registered professionals as well. So the business we're going to talk about today is Gitxsan Energy. So Gitxsan Energy you know, when we talk about energy, it's a hot topic and everyone's interested in energy nowadays. And so we wanted to look at a project that aligns with the Gitxsan values, right? So Gitxsan, think of the land and the sea and the water and the rivers. And they also look at things that are going to impact for 7 generations, right? So when we're looking at energy projects, we need to keep that in mind and look at things that are supportive of the values of the Gitxsan people. We also need to look at what we have a lot of. And as Jeff said, the forestry supply is, and your fuel supply for a bioheat project is core. So we have a lot of biomass. We're in the Gitxsan region, we're surrounded by forests, and Gitxsan Forest License Co. has a forest license of 386,000 square meters, or cubic meters, sorry. And so we wanted to utilize kind of what our assets were, natural assets were, while also trying to fuel economic development, and also what the problems were. So we have a large amount of forests, but our forestry industry is struggling, right? So we don't have a sawmill in Hazelton anymore. We used to. There is a couple of sawmills, one in Terrace and one in Smithers on either side of us. But there's not a lot of outlet for the pulp or the non-merchantable timber in the region. So we kind of wanted to create an energy strategy, obviously, that utilized what we had, solved some problems, and came up with obviously bioheat. And so we became a rolling bioheat boiler dealer. Sorry, it's not letting me. Okay. And then we started to look at, so the first thing we looked at was obviously our fuel supply. Can you guys see the mouse? Oh, sorry. Can you see the mouse if I point with it?
I can.
You can? Perfect. Thanks, Paul. So the first thing we did was look at our fuel supply. And obviously we have a large fuel supply in our region. And then the ultimate goal is obviously to look at long-term, what do we do with all this fiber and how does it support forestry? But you can't just start out, you know, with the big project. We need to kind of take baby steps or walk before we run and figure out what is the comfort. As Jeff mentioned again, you know, you need to have that community champion, and you need to have community buy-in and make sure that this is what your community wants, and it aligns with their values. And so we started here at Renewable Solutions, and we started installing these rolling bioheat boilers in high-profile community buildings. So we wanted them to be in high-profile buildings so that we really got an understanding of the community got an understanding of the impact of them, right? As far as the financial and the GHG emissions reductions, and they were also seen, right? So everyone likes something that you can see, touch, feel, you know, you actually see it being done. And then in order to fuel these deliveries, we purchased this fuel delivery truck. So this is actually a 14-ton pellet and wood chip delivery truck. And so this truck currently picks up pellets from pellet mills in the region and then delivers them to these installations. And so what we're trying to do is create the demand, right? So these renewable solutions, the bioheat installations that we have, are creating the demand for the ability for us to process our own fiber eventually, and then make this our whole economy, so that we have Gitxsan people working and utilizing our own fiber on our own projects to create our own energy. And so it becomes a closed loop, local, fully sustainable solution. But it does start with, you know, a project, and we're very grateful for CERRC to support us in our bioheat installation projects. So We've done a few projects in partnership with, so this one, the Gitxsan Gas Bar and Car Wash. I'll go into detail about these, each project. The Upper Skeena Recreation Center, so the Skeena Arena, as Jeff likes to call it, and the Gitxsan Wet'suwet'en Education Society, so that was another. So all three of these projects were chosen, and we partnered with the organizations and the proponents of these projects, basically, to install these and then to monitor them. So where we're at now, actually, I won't skip ahead. So first of all, the first thing we did was, like I said, we wanted people to be able to see it, feel it, understand it. So the first project we did was actually in our service bay. So we have a number of businesses operating out of an operations yard. It's a 3-bay garage in South Hazelton. And so the first installation we did was actually in that building. And we did that to make sure that if anyone had interest, and when we're trying to build relationships with the bands or other, the regional district, because we're the hereditary system, we're not a band. So when we partner on these applications, we partnered with the bands, in the case of Gitxsan, to develop these projects. So we wanted to have an installation locally that someone could actually see that it's possible and how we're doing it. So we installed ours first, and it was actually installed in 2016. The average GHG reductions for that installation is 112 tons a year of CO2. So it's been a great demo project for the region. We use wood pellets in it. So we were using bagged wood pellets at first. Now we're using our own bulk wood pellets that we bring in with the pellet truck, which also saves some environmental issues there with the plastic and such. So, sorry. So the Gitxsan Gas Bar and Car Wash, this was a new build. So Gitxsan had an economic development project within the band to build the gas bar, and it also has a food services location and then a car wash as well. So it's attached to their market, their food market, and we installed 2 Froling P100 pellet boilers in that location that heats the hot water for the car wash and also heats the building for the gas bar. And so those were installed and commissioned just about a year ago now. So we're just waiting for the 1-year data to come out of that. And so as soon as we have that, we'll be able to look at the GHG reductions for that project. But that's when the Gitxsan band decided to do this economic development project, you know, it proved that the Gitxsan people are focused on renewable energy projects, right? I mean, people always laugh because it's like a renewable energy project in a gas bar. And so it doesn't seem like they fit together, but you know, it's baby steps, and it's a process to get them to go. But I always joke that there is an electric car charging station at the gas bar as well. So you get all sorts of energy sources there, and it's a good learning opportunity for community members, and it's a well-visited site in town. So actually, if I go back to this picture, oh, sorry. The bottom right here, this is actually the installation in the gas bar. Okay, so the GWES, as we call it, is a training and alternative high school in Hazelton, actually Old Town. And they were spending $110,000 a year on stove oil, actually, to heat the school. And obviously that's a large chunk of someone's operating budget, especially for a nonprofit school. And so we talked to them about switching to bioheat and installing boilers that can accommodate both wood chips and wood pellets. So when you're looking at fuel supply, generally wood chips are more affordable. They're cheaper than wood pellets. And so we installed the two Froling T 150 kilowatt boilers in their school last year. And so it was about 273 tons of CO2 reductions last year. I haven't got the financials yet because we know how many pellets we sold them, but we don't know how much oil, if any, they still had to use. And so we're still looking on collecting that data from them. But I mean, it's important when we're looking at these projects to look at the reductions, obviously, in GHGs and the financial savings. And then also this project, they built a pellet bunker on the back of the property so that the pellet bunker could automatically feed the boiler. So there was less maintenance and less stuff for the on-site crew to do. And then Gitxsan Energy staff actually go and maintain the boilers for them and clear out the ash and do some of those things for them. And we deliver the fuel for them. So when we talk about a business model and economic development, it's not just the installation of the boilers and the savings for the company or the organization, in this case, the society that has the boiler. It's the long-term economic opportunities. So for us, that's the supply of pellets and the supply of maintenance to the boilers that we install. So the final project is the Upper Skeena Rec Center, so the Skeena Arena. That was a very large project in the region. So it's the development of a new ice arena. It also has a gym and fitness training area, and it's become the project up in Hazelton is called the Heart of the Hazeltons, and it's the central gathering place for all the communities. So the Gitxsan region has 5 communities, 5 Gitxsan communities plus Heidelgit, Whitsett. There's other communities that in the surrounding area, and so this arena is the heart of the community and the gathering place for all the communities and all the Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. And so we met with the owners committee and talked about, it's a wood building, right? And it should be heated by wood. And so we worked with them to install 2 Froling T400 150s. So this project's been a pain in a way when you deal with a large new build, like this is a over $20 million build. And our project is, a very small piece of that. Getting the actual arena open was a high priority, and getting the bioheat installed was a secondary. So Natural Resources Canada has been very supportive of us and helpful in pushing this along, and we're very excited for this finally to be done. Actually, this next month. So they last operating year, I believe the Upper Skeena had a propane, because they had to use propane as their which was supposed to be their backup system. I think it was over $200,000 in propane costs for the last year. And so when we're pushing for this installation, showing the cost savings of using wood fiber and employing local people as opposed to propane deliveries was a huge selling point for the owners committee on this project. And then the other one is we built a new office building. So Gitxsan Development Corporation built a 10,000 square foot office building in South Hazelton. So that's, we are building a industrial complex there, and the office building is the first of the buildings on site. And so we wanted to make sure that, we're living by what we're selling basically, and we believe in it. So we installed a bioheat boiler in that building, and when we can move in November, it'll be all ready to go, and we'll look at the GHG reductions in that project as well. An interesting thing that came up last year actually was because we purchased this fuel delivery truck for these bioheat installations, we had pellets on site, and part of one of the projects I was working on was a mental health project, and my colleague calls me on a Friday, and you know, she's helping me launch it out to our staff and community, and she's like, I'm gonna need this training if I'm gonna get pellets this weekend. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, there's no pellets, like there's no pellets available anywhere. And I was like, what? We got 13 tons sitting at the mill site. Just go over there and you know, load up a bucket, right? And she's like, really? Can we do that? And I was like, why not? You know, like, we don't want you to go cold. And so she's like, can we do this for other people? And I said, well, you know, how many people are we talking about? And so within an afternoon, we developed this bulk pellet program. And so we either would deliver if people had a fish tote or anything that they could store, where obviously they're white pellets, so they need to be watertight. So we delivered pellets to them, and then we ordered these bulk pellet containers. So they're basically like a plastic oil drum, and we fill them with 340 pounds of pellets. And so, and we sold these into the pellet barrel exchange program. And you know, this is a side shoot of something that we were able to do and able to service the community and make sure that people had pellets just because we had this truck, right? Like, it wasn't a, we'd always long-term thought that when we had a pellet plant, we would supply heat to the community members and their pellet stoves and things, but it wasn't an immediate. So within a Friday afternoon, we had to work out this whole delivery schedule and pickups, and it was a very exciting time, and we were quite proud of the way we were able to step in. And I mean, this again wouldn't be possible without these bioheat installations. So, you know, when NRCan talks about, you know, these solutions and, you know, how the side shoots of economic development that happen. So because of this pellet delivery, we were able to hire another individual to help. It actually took 6 people to get this business operational. Between all the billing and phone services and everything, it was a quite exciting time. So, and we like to, you know, Doug Donaldson is our MLA, or was. I don't know if he's not running again, but he even gave us a shout out on his Facebook page during the shortage. So that was some nice recognition. And then the last step for us is producing our own fuel. So currently our pellets, we're getting them from local, we're going and driving and picking them up from other pellet plants, which wasn't so much of an issue when we just had our big installations to worry about, like our commercial installations. But now that we're doing this pellet delivery, bulk pellet service, we're looking at how do we maintain a local pellet supply on site. So this winter we know we have pellets in community for community members, but also just the long term is to actually produce our own pellets, because we do have so much wood fiber available, and there is quite a market for white pellets. And also we've been working with this company called Energy out of Quebec, and they actually make black pellets. So black pellets are torrefied pellets, and these are a new technology. It's Canadian patented technology by Eonomic, and the benefit of black pellets is that they are hydrophobic, and so they can be exposed to water. So when we talk about you know, bioheat projects in northern communities or remote communities and getting pellets to some of these areas, if possible, if the appliances that they're using can use black pellets would most likely be a preferred fuel source, just because you don't want to ship a container full of white pellets up to a community and then they get wet, right? So if the community doesn't have the resources to, you know, produce their own fuel, and they sometimes, just like they bring in diesel, would bring in pellets. So Arex is currently shipping black pellets to a northern community right now, and they're getting very good feedback from that. So they ship them a container of pellets, of black pellets, and it lasts them all winter. So, so yeah, this is the next, but first, you know, the first steps were the demand, right? And testing the communities, you know, buy into these bioheat projects and how they, how their feelings about this is. And we are very excited about the next step and bringing everything locally, including the pellets supply. So I think that's all I got for you today. Does anyone, do I hand it back? Paul, Jeff?
Thank you so much, Kelsey. Jeff, did you have some follow-up? Or should we open up the floor to some questions?
Questions are fine. I just thought we might put contact at the end of the presentation. We might put contact information back up for myself in case anybody wants to get in touch with myself or any of the other bioheat officers, or Andre, the manager of the program, if they have any questions about the program.
I actually, so this is Andre. Sorry, I'll try and put my video on, although it's my internet's been a little unstable. Oh, it would help if my camera was upright. Sorry. So I did put my contact information in the chat. So, and I've already received one email from a participant. So I'll be responding to that shortly. But yeah, so you can just take a look at the chat, and my contact information is there. But yeah, thank you, Kelsey, for that great presentation. Very, very interesting, and always nice to see some of the projects that that we've been able to support doing such good things. So yeah, I think we can probably open up to questions. As I said, we've got I think all of the members of our BioHeat team on this call. So you have a number of people who can answer questions, as I'm sure Kelsey is also open to doing that as well. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to turn my video off again because my internet is not great today.
There's a few questions in the chat. Sorry, do you want me to answer them?
Sure.
Okay. So Kelly had asked if I'm able to show the cost savings and jobs and things like that. So because our projects are within a year or just over a year, we're just finalizing that information now. Every project we do a RET screen analysis before to predetermine basically what the savings would be and what the GHG reductions would be. So Kelly, if you want to send me an email, I can share with you those numbers. But I always like to know the real numbers, not the theoretical numbers. And then as far as jobs, we have, obviously when the pellet business took off, we had 6 staff either repositioned or full-time on this. Currently, we have 2 staff that are full-time on this, plus management from GDCs, so such as myself. I am not a Gitxsan Energy staff member, but I work for the parent company, GDC, so I help with the business planning and those sort of things. But on the ground, 2 full-time staff working on this, and many more when we're actually implementing a project, right? So, so when we're, for instance, when we're building a bunker for a community, we hire tradespeople to build those, and they're always community-based. So, if you have any other questions, let me know. So the employment training needs. So we've been working on a training program for a long time. There isn't currently anything out of the, strictly available that you can just purchase off the shelf. And so we've been working with our partner Evergreen BioHeat to create one, as well as Confederation College in Ontario. But I understand, I had heard that somewhere in Northwest Territories that they had created a BioHeat curriculum. But we've done kind of our own training. So Froiling, who boilers we use, they provide a lot of training materials. And then we've actually sent one of our technicians to Ontario, to the Confederation College, to where they have a number of boilers installed. to learn about the bioheat. Jeff, go for it.
Just to add that we also have a project that's currently undertaking, and we'll have by probably the end of March 2021, we'll have a whole staff training framework worked out that we're helping them with, and that might be a resource if I can convince them to share it, which I'm sure I can. That might be a resource for people too. Yeah,
that would be fantastic. I mean, we are kind of charting new territory, it seems like, and so we're making things up as we go, and it'd be nice to have a framework together. Fuel supply agreements and inventory assessments. So because we're currently using pellets from local pellet mills, we have supply agreements with those pellet mills, and we'll be working on, we have fiber supply from our own forest license and our neighboring forest licenses, and the management company for the pellet plant figured out. So fuel source for, so I'm just reading Louis' question. Yeah, so depending on what your slash waste is, the more bark you have in your slash, the more ash that will be created in your bioheat, right? So we have experienced these issues that Jeff brought up of low quality pellets and the ash and the size of them getting stuck in the boilers and things like this, and different issues pop up. So that's another reason why we're very excited about our own pellet plant, because then we can control the quality of the white pellets that will be produced, right? And a lot of the white pellets that are produced currently in BC, at least, are shipped overseas, right? So they're not designed for the domestic market. They're designed for an industrial market, and so we want a higher quality white pellet available for bioheat. Jeff?
Yeah, just a point to add to the inventory assessments in the previous question. You may want to check with your province or territory because often they have done inventory assessments. I'm thinking of an example in Manitoba where we have 3 projects there, and we liaised with the province, which had already done inventory assessments of the forests throughout the province, and we were able to get some of that information and make it available to the communities that are doing feasibility studies for adding biomass combustion to their mix of energy production. So make sure you check with them, and maybe in universities too. Universities often have done work in the area of forest inventory assessment. The other thing I'd add is that you said about the question about is biofuel slash waste, is that a source of fuel? In terms of the eligibility for the bioheat program, anything that is wood that comes out of the forest is an eligible fuel source.
That's all the typed questions. Is there anyone have another question?
I have a question, Kelsey. So for the pellet operation that you're trying to get going, you're saying that your target is 100,000 tons. How much of that is for internal use for your own community initiatives, and how much would be set aside for sale?
Yeah, so right now we're working with so CERRC obviously is a partner in the project, and we are looking at 20,000 tons of white pellets and 80,000 tons of black pellets in that pellet plant currently. But we could do 100,000 tons of white pellets, you know, if there was no market for black pellets, right? We also think that there's going to be a shift in the pellet market. You know, more people are going to love the usability of a black pellet, right? We have to be careful because a black pellet is it's a higher energy density, right? So it's hotter. So not every appliance can accept a black pellet. So like we, you know, tell people like you can throw a handful of black pellets in a fire, but you're actually gonna have to move your camp chair back because it's going to be hotter, right? Just as a, you know, a real life example of what we're talking about. And so all of our pellets are for sale. So Gitxsan Energy resells those pellets, basically, right? So that is the long-term economic opportunity for Gitxsan Energy, because the sale of an appliance and an installation of an appliance is a one-time transaction, right? The fuel supply is an ongoing reoccurring revenue source, right? So you can't create sustainable jobs unless you have reoccurring revenue sources. So when we install a boiler, we also have an energy service agreement that goes along with it, right? So that we can install the, or we can continue supplying heat and continue employing Gitxsan people.
There's a couple of more questions. One from Mackenzie asking, black pellets, are they higher cost to produce and consume? And is the Canadian market preferring black pellets over white pellets?
Yeah, so black pellets are very new, right? So they've been talked about a long time, but there isn't currently a commercial supply, a commercial scale black pellet plant in Canada. So ours would be the first. So white pellets are obviously the preferred right now. They are, as far as more expensive to produce, you need that torrefaction step. So it's basically a white pellet plant with this extra step in the middle. And so it would be more expensive, but we're selling them on a energy price. So a white pellet has like 16 gigajoules of energy per ton, and a black pellet has like 23 or 21. No, sorry, 21. Coal has 23. And so on a energy scale, that's what we're selling them for. So they will be more expensive than white pellets, but the same amount of energy will be delivered. So I hope that makes sense.
Oh, and Louis had a question about if part of your annual allowable cut is used directly to source pellets.
So our forestry operation, right? So has the AAC, and then we currently are not producing any pellets, right? So our AAC is not fully utilized currently. And so the Skeena sawmills in Terrace, they have their own forest license and their own pellet mill. And then there's another one in Terrace. So we're utilizing pellets from them.
That might, it's just a compliment basically to Kelsey, but I was talking earlier about capacity building. And what we try to get in capacity is we try to get Kelseys in communities where somebody who's competent, who understands how things work and who can make things happen, and has to be a bit of a rabble rouser, I'm assuming, to get people going when they drag their heels or when things go wrong, like suddenly there are no pellets, like that story you told us, and somebody had to take had to be proactive and take the initiative to get that kind of thing moving, sort of as a project champion kind of thing. And so I congratulate you, Kelsey, on what you've done. And you're basically a living, breathing example of what we mean when we say capacity building the capacity of the personnel within a community who have the wherewithal to do these things. And it isn't, people they're not born able to do this kind of stuff. They have to learn how to do it. And it works. And I'm really glad that you're doing what you're doing. And thank you for a great presentation today.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I'm going to say it's a process too, right? So, I mean, we trained someone, and he didn't work out. He left. So we trained someone else, right? So capacity is always an ongoing thing. It's not a one and done. And there's just always more to learn, and there's more development of a project, right? So we think of it as a continuum, and we had a plan. I like to say, Steve Jobs he wanted the iPhone, but he did I don't even know what it's called anymore, the music one first, right? To kind of transition us into the iPhone, right? And that's kind of what we did. We know we needed to get rid of all this fiber, but we needed to back it up and figure out what's the logical steps in order to make that happen. And really creating that demand, right? With the BioHeat was what did that we were able to, again, purchase that fuel truck and then look at other opportunities that brought to the community.
You're talking about the iPod?
The iPod, that's what it is. Yeah, it's an something.
Yeah, I have daughters. We went through that. I'm that old. I know about that.
There was one more question about the average size bin that a household would need when delivered for pellets.
So we, on that Friday afternoon, spent a lot of time figuring that out as far as how do we get a waterproof container, right? That's manageable, right? So that we can deliver and pick up and people can maneuver around in their property. So it's a 340-pound container is what we deliver, and it's an exchange program. So it's not too maneuverable, but it is enough to fuel a house for if you have a pellet stove for a few weeks, right? So we have a deposit that's paid on the container, right? And when it's empty or close to empty, you just call us and we come and drop you off another one. We take the empty container back. A lot of people have started building like 1-ton pellet bunkers on their property so that we can come and fill them up, and that would give them enough pellets for the year, right? And then we're also hoping this year to be able to get a engineered plan to build 1-ton pellet bunkers for residents, and that they can we can hire more community members to build those bunkers, and then we can fill them up once. I mean, a lot of this, when you look at the economics of it, is the delivery costs, right? So the Gitxsan territory is 33,000 square kilometers, right? That's a lot of territory to deliver. And we've also had orders from Terrace, Smithers, Lac Lalams, you know, the whole region. So, you know, the logistics of it is quickly becoming a hurdle for us. And so we're trying to figure out how do we get as many pellets delivered while still making it sustainable of an operation.
About it is that I was thinking about a community we have where they have diesel plumes, rather, the plumes they call them, where the diesel leaks out of places because the frost, you know, the buildings are, the ground is freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing, and the pipes move a little bit and the diesel starts to drain out of the tank, for example, and it creates a great plume in the tundra. And you spill those pellets, those wood pellets all over the place, and what's the consequence? Well, nothing. You might entertain a few squirrels. It's not going to cause a problem to the environment. So that's one of the beautiful things about delivering pellets. If a few pop out, nobody's really too concerned about it.
Yeah, as long as they stay dry, right? The problem with the white pellets is that they'll turn to mush, right?
Yeah, they can turn to mush if they like. They don't hurt the environment. Yeah, sure, it doesn't help the homeowner any, but it's not an environmental disaster if they spill.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not.
Okay, we're at our time limit. So thank you so much, Kelsey and Jeff. Very useful information. I think there's a number of people that joined us that have some follow-up questions. So please use the contact information that Andre supplied, and we'll try to get that info to you. This session is being recorded, and we'll also be sharing the PowerPoints as well to all those that were participants in today's session. So thank you all very much. I appreciate you sharing your time with us today. Take care.
Thank you, Paul. And thanks, Kelsey.